When you hear the words classical sculptures, what do you think of first? You think white, marble, bronze, Roman, and Greek, right? Well, you would be kind of right. They originally weren't plain white marble. They actually had color and lots of it. To be more specific, they weren't polychromatic. There is an exhibit called Gods and Color that focuses around this, and an article titled The Myth of Whiteness in Classical Sculptures that also relates to this topic, and a deeper stance on why it was a big deal for these works of art to be marble white, and why it took so long to be revealed that they weren't. A lot of it has to also do with race. The focus on this video will be on the exhibit and how they discovered this revelation about classical sculptures thanks to modern technology. Many of these pieces have been excavated, had faded areas of color and residue left over, but only so much, due to weathering and how old these pieces really are, because they're centuries old. And thinking about it, color can only last so long, especially with the type of pigments they were using. The main reason we are able to recreate these pieces in color and find their old patterns is due to technology we have today. UV, ultraviolet, photography is used to find pigments and patterns not able to be seen with the naked eye. It's also called infrared luminescence photography. Using this method was extremely helpful because although you can't see actual colors, the way certain pigments shine can tell what colors were used. This is especially helpful because before UV, the only way to test if there were traces of pigments would have to be taking samples from the works of art to perform a chemical analysis, and this would result in damaging the pieces. For example, traces of Egyptian blue grow brightly under infrared. I have a couple examples of these types of photography. One would be this funerary stele that shows the little lines of artwork and traces of patterns and other things. And also the statue of the Greek muse Thalia's robes, because you can see little dots of very bright glowing, almost like glow-in-the-dark spots, which shows traces of Egyptian blue, because it was known and proven that Egyptian blue was able to glow like this under infrared and luminescence photography. These examples of colored sculptures have been reconstructed pieces to show what the pieces excavated either would have looked like, or the closest guesses that can be made with the semi-limited information we can gather, because these types of photography are not in color. They are in black and white, and it's only able to be guessed because of other technologies like this that thankfully we have today. And another thing is when they recreate these things, they don't use the real pieces found for many reasons, among, the obvious, like not ruining the old artifacts. But these reconstructions show us a little of what Greek and Roman sculptures actually would look like. The same can be said for the works that are made from bronze as well. There is a speculation that colorful glass and gems were used for wounds to make them extra bright and extra dramatic, I guess you could say. A great example of this is the piece of the Boxer. Though there are only 7 large known pieces of bronze sculptures, it can be an exciting revelation to know that these pieces were vivid with color too, not just the marble pieces, which is very interesting because you wouldn't think bronze sculptures would have paint, but they did, and it was vivid, if not more vivid, and they look amazing. Another great piece of evidence we have is a retelling by an archaeologist named Louis Cuvier, I believe is how you say it, on the Greek island Delos. I think that's how you say that, or Delo. He described the colors of the statue, called small Herculaneum woman, which would be used to help recreate this piece, along with modern technology. Though there is some confusion about where the green and rose colors meet because of them overlapping. It has been deduced that the green fabric was so sheer and being held tight enough against the statue's body, you can see through the green to the rose-colored robes, which can be another great example of just how great their artwork was, because they were able to relate a telling of fabric being sheer with marble and paint. Another fact that I think is really great and really helps see these works of art in their true forms is the style they used to reconstruct these sculptures. The materials that would have been used at the time were used to repaint the reconstructions, and the methods that were used to gather these things to make the ground up pigments in order to make the paint. This means that the minerals like cinnabar and the browns colors were from earths, like ground, dirt and whatnot, along with the actual Egyptian blue. They even used such things as plants and animals, like the sea snail, to recreate pigments, which actually was a very expensive way to make purple, because you would need thousands upon thousands of sea snail shells to make purple, because only so much can make barely a gram of pigment or so. And if you have this big sculpture, you need way more than that to be able to actually use the color purple. So it was very, very expensive, which is probably why, if these examples are anything to go by, they didn't use purple very much. If you pay attention, you can see that they used mostly reds and yellows and browns, rich colors that were easily accessible. And once they ground these pigments, they were mixed with the natural bases they would have even used back then, such as oils or eggs or other means that are used to make paint. And then they even used a fine paintbrush that is used to paint directly on the marble sculptures themselves. Now, I have more examples to show befores and afters of the reconstructions as I talk about this a little more. From my perspective, is that it's crazy to think that people actually would want to hide the fact that these statues were colored. And a lot of it, because of what I've read from the article that I will be posting in a link below this video as well, that a lot of it had to do with, of course, like a lot of things are related to, race, because they wanted to believe in the pure whiteness, as a little air quote from a little snippet, because they were people who would argue day and night about if these sculptures really were colored, even with all these evidence of excavated pieces that have even pieces of pigment still on them. Like this funeral piece that I have right here, that was, since it was a tomb and whatnot, it was, protected. So you can see that there was actual pigment on it. And it's just astounding that it is still argued to this day because of a classic, whatever you want to call it, I guess elitist perspective on art. And that goes to show that a lot of artwork, no matter the time period or whatever, there will always be an elitist who believes this thing so hard that until a new thing takes over, nothing will change. Thank you for listening, and I hope this was insightful for you and that maybe you learned something new and maybe you would like to check it out. These pictures are snippets from an online, interactive exhibit that you can actually look at and read about and see the differences and see the pieces that are usually on display. I will link that in the New Yorker article in the description of this video. Thank you very much.